Jamie in Wisconsin. You're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about, Jamie?
Hi, I called today. I wanted to talk about the justification that I've heard you guys give for abortion, and then I just want to break it down to its basic premise and then see if that premise carries over to other decisions that maybe you guys would espouse, or see where you guys sit on that. So if I could just, I'm going to start by just kind of recapping what my understanding is.
I actually, can I ask you a quick question, Jamie?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yep.
Can you tell me where this intersects with atheism? Like, I'm happy to have the conversation, but I feel like I need to take off my atheist hat and put on other hats to answer you. And while this is a show that espouses more than just atheism, it espouses skepticism and humanism. I'm super curious. How is this an atheist question?
Right.
I think the pool of philosophy that we use is very deep as far as where we make our decisions. So Christians would say we can have we can be very smart and have a million great points, but the bottom line is maybe God said that we shouldn't do abortion, so that's where we're going to rest with, where maybe somebody from an atheist standpoint using secular humanism would kind of go through their points and plot them out more mathematically. Well, this is my premise. This is where the premise carries force. So this is where I make my decision. And, so that's why I say, if that makes sense, sorry.
Sure. So do you want to engage with this today?
Sure. Can't promise a long conversation because I'm honestly not sure where you've heard my views on abortion because I don't necessarily talk about them on the show. But I do want to make sure that we are clarifying here. There are, most Christians actually are okay with abortion because about 70% of the U.S. supports Roe v. Wade. And most of the U.S. is still Christian. Also, the majority of abortions that are had by Christians. So this is not in any way a black and white, this or that kind of conversation. So as long as we're putting that out there and making sure that we're not drawing that distinction, I'm happy to engage with you, at least as long as we can keep kind of the skepticism aspect as front and center here.
Yep, that's perfect. So my understanding is that some of the major justifications is because it's kind of paramount, the woman's choice in the matter, and she shouldn't be forced to use her body, to carry forth the pregnancy. If she gets pregnant, if she chooses to have sex, that's not a choice to become pregnant. And if she happens to get pregnant, even if she chooses to become pregnant, that doesn't necessarily means that she's choosing to carry the pregnancy to term. And like I say, everything comes down to her choice and what she's going to use in her body. Am I kind of being a little bit accurate with my description of our justification?
I don't know if I'd call it a justification. I'd say that it's a worldview informed by consistent consent. So let's talk about this. Say a woman decides that she's ready to have sex, or anybody with a uterus decides they're ready to have sex. That does not mean that she is consenting to any particular type of sex. Right. And say that in the middle of sex, things go wrong. Either she starts to have pain or her partner, whoever it is, decides that they are going to engage in something that maybe they didn't agree on beforehand. That person has a right to say, stop, I'm done. I don't want to have sex anymore, even though I consented initially. It's a concept of always being able to say no when it comes to your body. So in that sense, yes, but that's not a justification so much as just my approach to consent in general.
Yeah, I think that there are other things that you can consider. I think we're both, V and I are under the assumption that you are against abortion. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're having a conversation that we all understand that we're having. Okay.
It sounds like, if I just can, because V hit it on the head. So V hit it on the head so well that we really we reached that basic reductio premise that it's really about consent. It's about personal choice and consent on what they're going to do with their body. So I would like to take that premise and now just move it into a couple other aspects and choices in life to see if you guys are consistent in that worldview. My question would be, would you guys also
Well, Jamie, can we add one more in then if we're doing that?
Absolutely.
Cool. A child should never be a punishment. Raising a child in an environment where they're treated like a punishment is terrible for literally everyone involved. And so, okay, now go ahead.
So if we're going to move the personal choice and consent over, would you guys be advocates then for dismantling our welfare system, food stamp system, these kind of things where people are mandated to give their labor and their lives to the support of other people and maybe turning it into a voluntary system?
Ooh, so you mean dismantling the idea that we need to use our bodies to create capital for a few people in order to survive? Are you advocating for the dismantling of capitalism? That's impressive.
It is.
Wow.
I wonder, are you against the police as well? Do you think we should dismantle the police department?
You guys kind of flipped it on its head a little bit, I think.
No. We're taking you exactly where you're describing. Yeah. You see, taxes fund police, and if this is an argument against taxes, then we're just making sure you are wanting to entirely dismantle the police as a concept. Then, at least one that's funded by taxes. Is that right? How about teachers?
Yeah, I think you could.
Are you against teachers and firefighters as well?
Well, I am against government schools. You could do a voluntary system. People could sign up and volunteer and be part of it. Insurance, you know.
Are we talking to a sovereign? Are you a sovereign citizen, Jamie?
I'm not. I'm not, but I do think I do kind of break it down to where, yeah, we shouldn't be forced to pay all of our money for all these things that we don't really have choices on. Now, roads, and I mean, we know there's gray areas and stuff.
Roads is coming. Okay, but here's the thing, Jamie. This is what I don't understand. You seem to be advocating for personal autonomy to the extent that we don't have to pay taxes, we don't have government schools, and yet you support restricting abortion? How does that follow? That seems like a contradiction in terms there.
I'm not saying that the government should. I'm not saying the government should restrict abortion. I'm just wondering if my understanding of your premise, if you guys would carry that over consistently.
Sure. So I think that when it comes to us, Jamie, I spoke over you. You want to finish that again?
I'm kind of putting the burden on you guys, the onus on you guys to see if your model carries over. We could talk about my model and where my model fails and how I'm wrong a million ways and I'm inconsistent a million ways, and I will concede all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do you want to know about us?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure. Okay. Well, the question is that sometimes when I hear atheists speak, they speak like we're very scientific and we have everything down very pat and there's not huge holes in hypocrisy in our beliefs because we go off of evidence and science, and those things are always very high standard. And I always like to just kind of show people that I don't think it matters what a person believes. I think we're always wrong in like a million ways. And I think it's important that people understand that to reach more to truth. It's important to be honest about a person's own inconsistencies. So
sure.
I just appreciate it when people kind of say, yeah, we do have troubles with these things, you know?
Okay. Well, then I can answer two ways. I'll be quick because I know you have responses as well. Mm-hmm. Actually, do you want to go first? Because I've got two.
Okay, sounds good. So first of all, Jamie, I agree with you. I think the people who pretend they have it all figured out and they've reached everything through logical conclusions and there's no emotion and there's no fallacies and there's no bias is all absolutely bogus. Everybody is just figuring their shit out. And some people have a better toolbox and some don't, but that doesn't mean that anybody has everything all wrapped up, right? We've all got our areas of blind spots. In this instance, I am a little bit hesitant to engage just because I think your assumption is that there are hard and fast rules that can be extended to all scenarios and all forms of interaction. And while I am 100% down with bodily autonomy and consistent, enthusiastic consent when it comes to two individuals, I think that there's a bigger and much more interesting conversation to be had about what that looks like for government systems, what that looks like for taxes and for the police and for government schools and for capitalism, right? Like, if we are going to go here, let's go all the way and abolish the idea that you need to work for a living because your body is being forced to create money for someone else. Like, we can have that conversation 100%, and I'd love to hypothesize about what that looks like.
My brain's going right down that way too. I mean, why would you punish somebody or send them to jail if they, aren't you taking away their autonomy? If they decided to kill someone and they wanted to continue on a murdering spree,
right?
By
trying to get
them.
This down to its most composite parts is good in a sense, to an extent, but I think that we are running the risk of being reductionistic here and reducing everything to one sentence and then trying to apply that to every possible scenario. And of course, we're all going to come up against barriers and walls and blind spots, because that is the nature of subjective morality. That is the nature of being an agnostic. We don't know everything, and we have no idea how to use the rules of the game in a way that makes the most sense and helps everybody equally. We're trying. That's what secular humanism is about. But what I can say is that as far as the abortion issue goes, as far as bodily autonomy for an individual goes, I think we've hit the nail on the head with that one.
I do too. And I do want to give it one other, because we've been talking about this ideologically.
Yeah. Am I the one talking ideologically and you're going to go pragmatism in here? Fun.
I know, right?
Okay.
So the other is the pragmatic sense. We live in a social hierarchy. We are a social species. And because of that, there are things that you give to the group because you are receiving a benefit, right? I participate in this society and reap the benefit of being able to go to the grocery store and have foods from all over the world, because we are a social species. We are working together to build that society together. It's a social contract. And so pragmatically, even if you take the ideals out, making those concessions increases the quality of life. And if you just want to be utilitarian about it, there's that. And when you apply it to abortion, it's this. If abortions were restricted, that would not stop people from having them. It would just make them less safe. And so by making sure that...
Actually, abortion is at an all-time low since Roe v. Wade was passed.
Yeah. Well, and I think that coincides with the availability of birth control.
And sex education.
Yeah.
All of which are encouraging bodily autonomy and not allowing somebody to rely too much on the...
Yeah. I just think that if you want to make sure that people are living healthy lives and are minimizing risks to themselves, then making sure that they have access to abortions is, safe abortions in clinical environments and environments that they can be safe in. Then you are contributing to the growth of a society that has less suffering in it.
And less people who are reliant on the welfare that you apparently dislike because they were forced to have more kids than they could financially afford.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope that gives you a lot to chew on, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it might have given him more than he wanted.
I think this is probably the most level-headed discussion on abortion that has happened on the ACA so far. So
well, but Jamie, I would I don't know. We did most of the talking though.
I think that's why it was so level-headed.
Hey Jamie, I would love for you to listen back in and pick out things that you want to talk about in specifics, because if you want to talk about an ideology and we could zoom in on that, maybe we can have a more nuanced conversation. But it seems like we zoomed out so much that we could only give a general picture, especially, this call-in format.
A little bit. Can I recap with just a couple quick sentences?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's an important logical tool that we do when we break things down to its basic premise and then see if that premise extends to other areas. Isn't that like a normal part of logical, working through problems? We kind of address that if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and I think you guys were kind of saying that that's not something you can do all the time, although, like I say, I would put forth, I think that's a kind of a common logical tool to use And of course, like I say, you run into some problems there. And then I don't 100% agree with, like working, somebody going to jail for murder is way different than somebody being forced to pay their labor and taxes to support other people that, perhaps were born into a bad situation or made a bad situation, whether it might be, they're like, those things to me are kind of apples and oranges. So I think.
Are you saying that we can't use the same standard for all situations?
You can, but somebody murdering someone and being segregated from society for that is different than a government coming to me saying I have to go to work and pay 50% of my labor to support, you know what I'm saying, other people. Those things I don't think are.
I think I speak for both of us when I say we're very glad you've come to agree with us.
Perfect. I'm glad we're all getting along. I appreciate you guys.
All right, take care, man.
Keep up the good work.
Well,
Thank you.
From a religious theist caller, from somebody who called in specifically saying, hey, they're a believer, they want to challenge our ideas, to say, keep up the good work. That, all right, either we're doing something really, really well
or failing miserably.
Yeah. So for those following at home, I think that was actually really, really useful. I think we walked around the subject of applying a general principle everywhere is not the way you do that. And
if only it were, it would be so much easier to live life if we had, say, like 10, like just like rules or commandments to kind of go off of that worked in all scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh, no. Please, if you're a religious caller, please call in about that just so that we can make V sit with it.